Two friends share one wife. My name is Derek Jones, but that doesn't matter for this story. A solid 6 feet tall and under 200 pounds, hair the color of sand and deep dark blue eyes. If you asked any of the ladies, I could be described as handsome. But that was then and this is now. Now my height is 5 feet 10 inches and my weight is 172 pounds. When I was growing up, I did all the things that young people do. Yes, I got drunk a few times, got high a few times, and discovered that I didn't really like either of those things. I also had sex. I never kept score, but I would have lost count anyway. I had a best buddy named Jack Johnson. He was a lot like me, and we got along in ways that are hard to describe. His family moved to our town when we were in 2nd grade. If we told people we were brothers, they'd believe it. Plus, we were always together, or almost always. We played on the same teams, went to the same dances, and when we did meet up, we had double dates most of the time. I asked one girl to my junior high school graduation, but Jack asked her first. The next year, he asked the one I'd asked the year before, and I went with the one he'd asked. "How is she?" Jack asked me the next day. We both roared at that, we both knew. We went out with the same girls sometimes, comparing them. Just two crazy guys who grew up together and became fast friends. I'll never forget the day Jack pulled up to my house in his incredibly bright red Camaro. I looked out. He had some girl with him. No big deal, he usually did. The one I was with, Wanda, I think her name was still in my bed. I could hear her all the way to the living room. She was definitely snoring. I was just there watching her sleep. Every breath of air was so loud, I swear her big breasts were vibrating. Jack got out of the car and went to the passenger door to open it. And then this vision came out. I stood there and watched. Jack had found himself a winner, there was no doubt about that. How can a man describe such a reaction? I honestly don't know. What I do know is that she let me know that Wanda hadn't gotten everything I had to give. Her hair flowed down to her shoulders and beyond. She wore round, gold-rimmed glasses, freckles, an upturned button nose, and a body that was, well, just right. She wasn't a classic beauty. She was, I don't know what she was. She swayed slightly as she walked, and her gait was reminiscent of models showing off their clothes. I realized I wasn't breathing as she and Jack approached my porch. "Hey, how's it going?" Jack grinned, reaching out to touch her elbow as she stepped onto my porch. "This is Carrie, my buddy Derek." I realized from the look on her face that he was reading my mind. She held out her hand and smiled. I took it. It was like butter. Warm. Soft. There were many more comments, but I don't remember any of them. We were all sitting around doing our usual stuff, and then a girl named Wanda, who I was staying with, came out wearing one of my t-shirts. She looked a little worn out, but to tell you the truth, it was my fault. We'd had a lot of fun the night before. Jack had told me that she liked to have sex, and he was right. Wanda was the sloppy type. She tucked her legs under her on the couch and sat so that her black hair was visible. Carrie didn't say anything. Only an amused expression appeared on her face. I wanted Wanda to cover herself, but I didn't say anything. Finally, Wanda wanted to go home, and Jack and Carrie left. I didn't want them to leave. Jack and Carrie had become exclusive, much to my dismay. We'd hooked up with girlfriends before, but never at the same time. But not Carrie. Jack had gotten her and kept her. I wanted to keep her, and at first even considered it. But Jack made it clear that this time was different. And me? I was so in love with this woman I had to be careful around her. I was the best man at their wedding the first time I had ever had the chance to put my arms around her and kiss her right on the lips. That's something I'll never forget. Carrie leaned back and looked me straight in the eyes. "I'm sorry, Derek. It's really Jack. I love that man." Then she smiled and let me go. I immediately realized that all my attempts to show nothing had failed. She knew how I felt. I guess I wasn't as good at hiding it as I thought I was. I know she filled my head with all sorts of thoughts and fantasies, but I also knew it couldn't be true. Jack was furious when he found out I was leaving for the army in a few weeks. I'd always been there for him. He'd always been there for me. And now he didn't want me to leave. Yeah, we were really close. But the situation was such that I wanted to move far away to forget Carrie. But that didn't work either. Carrie was even more pissed off when Jack signed off a few days later. "What are you doing, Jack?" I asked when he told me about it. "There's no way I'm letting you do this." He told me. In the army, the odds of us not ending up in the same place would have been very high. But we did. To this day, I don't remember the explosion, but it was big. It came from my side, and the tin can that Jack and I and a few other guys were in didn't stand a chance. I remember there was a lot of gunfire and someone yelling, "Oh my God," over and over again. When a person has two artificial legs, they have to constantly move to stay upright. It took me a while to get used to it, but then it got so that if you didn't know, you probably wouldn't notice. I was lucky in that my legs were cut off just below the knees. Guys who have lost limbs above the knee have had a much harder time. I was told that plastic surgery would fix my face, and it did help, but the person looking back at me from the mirror was a different person. They also forged pieces of metal out of my insides and put everything back together. The truth is, I was one of the lucky ones. Jack pulled me out of the car and dragged me across the street to the pile of wreckage, and then, despite the fact that he was bleeding from everywhere, he held off those who tried to finish us off. In doing so, he took 2 bullets to the chest, but both were stopped by his body armor. Each time he got to his feet and started shooting again, I could see it with my one good eye. Then more of our men came up, and it was over quickly. I think I blacked out for a while. I remember the helicopter, and I remember Jack holding out his hand to me. How Jack got out of there with nothing but superficial wounds is beyond me. Maybe because me and 2 other guys took the brunt of it. The other 2? Well, they're heroes. That was the end of military service for both of us. Jack's left arm was now hanging down. He could move it, but it would never be the same. This was Jack's idea of superficial, and he was more worried about me than himself. Yeah? I felt guilty, because if it wasn't for me, none of this would have happened. Hey, we could have been run over by God knows what if we hadn't gone, so it's not your fault. He consoled me one evening when I was in one of my depressive moods. The government takes surprisingly good care of its people, and I don't care what anyone says about it. I would have no reason to work. It was a long way from wealth, but I was getting enough allowance to live on. Jack lost 2 fingers and part of the vision in one eye, so he was in the same situation. Yeah, I know. Superficial, he said. Most of my compensation went into buying a Corvette, red with a manual transmission. Tell me a guy with no legs can't drive a manual car. You want to bet? Jack went to work for a software firm, and I got a job in accounting at the same firm. So we drove to work together. Life flowed one day at a time, the crazy days of growing up long gone. Then Carrie came along. I still felt the same way, but did my best not to show it. It was like it was working. I even went on dates. You'd think a man with a strangely disfigured face and no legs wouldn't get anywhere at all. Place your bets on that too. It's actually an advantage. Women are curious. Maybe that's the point? I got a lot of comments when I asked a woman out on a date driving a red Corvette. Some of them also paid attention to my legs, and I thought it was strange at first, but they came over to my bed and continued on their way, which was partly my fault. None of them were Carrie. None of them were good enough. Often, Jack and I, Carrie and I, would have dinner at their house, spend the evenings. Carrie and I danced. Jack never objected to it. We all grew closer as a threesome, not just the 2 of us, if possible. There was no silly friction or anything, just dancing, but I never once kissed her, never said or did anything to her. I just couldn't, no matter what I felt inside. Jack was a man I was unashamedly in love with. A playmate? No problem. A wife? Number vows, you see. It mattered to them, and it mattered to me. The change was forced. 6 long years passed, We drove to work as we did every day. Some days we drove Jack's van. On good days, we drove my Vate. By then, I had turned in my other car and got a brand new one. It was a Z06 50th anniversary model. It had 85 miles on it. I'd bought it just 2 days before, so I stopped by to pick Jack up that morning. "Bet you can pick up girls on this thing?" he grinned, climbing in. "You have the honor of being the first person to ride it." I laughed back. We chatted about trolling on it as usual. I got up and turned off the traction control so I could chirp the tires. There was no one around. We were playing, having fun. The sun was shining. The day promised to be a good one. On the highway, I looked both ways and pulled into the center turn lane, checked my mirror, and saw it was clear, so I moved right into the fast lane. I couldn't see the car approaching quickly in the right lane in time, and the guy ducked to the left, avoiding the slower car. Just a guy on a Volvo hot rod testing his new supercharger. I saw him just before he hit and pressed my foot to the floor to get away from him. The rear tires instantly shrieked, but it was too late. He hit me in the rear and we started spinning to the right. The problem with an artificial leg is that in order to get your foot off the floor, you have to lift your whole leg. This means the reflexes get slower. My Corvette swept right across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic, 405 horsepower squealing in second gear. Something white and big. I saw it. When everything came to a stop, I looked back and saw that Jack had the entire side of the cab caved in. He hadn't moved at all. It was his turn to be on the wrong side, but the airbags went off. It saved his life. Barely. They cut him out of the car and took us both to the emergency room. There was not a mark on me except for swollen eyes and a very sore wrist. My feet had smashed into the underside of the dashboard and even bent. But they were legs of steel. Carrie came into the room as I sat there in a terrible state. "What happened?" she asked. I told her, and that's when she cried, which broke my heart. She grabbed me and hugged me, and I quietly pressed myself against her, trying my hardest to keep my look blank. What I felt when Carrie was in my arms wasn't something I was proud of, not in this moment. Jack had been in the hospital for almost 3 long months. I visited him every day, and as a result, I saw Carrie often. Even more than usual. I think for a while we leaned on each other for support. Carrie took me out to dinner a few times, and we often ate lunch together and talked. One day she mentioned that she noticed I didn't go on dates much. I wasn't dating either. Dating one woman after another, knowing it will be a dead end, is not filling a man's life. Maybe some men manage to do it. But now that I'm in my late 30s, I wonder if the truth is, I've matured. You know, if I hadn't met Jack first, I think I might have ended up with you, Carrie admitted, patting me on the back. "Yeah, you've always struck me as special," I told her. "You don't hide it very well," she smiled. "I'm sorry, I thought I was. Number. And don't apologize, it's flattering. Besides, I really like you too. You're a really nice guy. Jack knows how you feel, we've even talked about it. He told me he always hoped you'd find someone to make you happy. He even said he was surprised that you never flirted with me." "Jack? You know how I feel about him. I could never—" I must have blushed at that. "I know. But he told me about you two trading women." She grinned. All I could do was blush. A few days after that, Jack was discharged. There were several surgeries, each of which caused a lot of trouble, but he was back on his feet and acting like Jack again. Neither of us went back to work. The guy with the supercharged Volvo didn't have insurance at all, but I did. And Jack had one of those disability policies. He and Carrie had gotten one when they got married. It was a very good thing. All risks and $1 million on my side, plus one of those insurance policies that pays a monthly benefit for life. I had a bad eye before, and now it's cloudy, so I'm disabled too. My insurance agent talked me into it, explaining that shiny, bright red new Corvettes are a target in case of an incident. They even got me a new Corvette Z06, but it was blue. I sold it and bought a van. Jack was now considered a total invalid. as his left arm was hanging limbless and it was unlikely he would ever be able to use it. In addition, he carried a small bag under his clothes, and that was it for the rest of his life. I felt somewhat guilty about this, but Jack took it all in stride. "We certainly turned out to be a pair of cripples, but at least you don't have a sore toe," he joked. I'd always had trouble with the big toe on my left foot before. You'd think that losing my foot would fix it, but it didn't. It still hurt. Life went back to normal, as much as was even possible in our situation. By then, even with 2 steel legs, I didn't feel disabled at all. I even went out and bought myself a pair of those treadmill legs. A man can fly with them. Jack and I went fishing, joined a bowling team, and Carrie always came to watch and cheer when one of us managed to hit a good throw. But something was wrong. I knew and felt it, but I didn't know what it was. Carrie used to be cheerful, she still is, but every now and then I noticed that she would fall into a kind of gloom. One day Carrie and I were sitting in the waiting room. I had taken them to a doctor's appointment. "How's it going? How are you and Jack doing? I'm surprised you still don't have kids," I said casually. I was just making conversation. At that point, I still didn't know what was going on with them. "We can't. Jack, he's having surgery. They cut some nerve endings. And he can't. It's not." Carrie lowered her eyes. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry," said I. Jack never talked about it. Most men don't talk about it, even with close friends, I guess. The doctor said that maybe someday, because I guess they grow back. I knew it was possible. My own scars along the full length of one side hadn't healed in years, but now they itched frequently. I tried to comfort her. Carrie burst into tears again, and I hugged her again. Jack soon appeared. He looked worriedly at Carrie, then at me, but said nothing. Married, of course. Do people get like that just knowing? We all walked home in silence. 2 days later, Jack invited me to dinner. It wasn't unusual. I was already there at least 2 or 3 times a week. Later, we sat and chatted about everything in the world, Carrie often joining in the conversation. This evening, she was being quiet, which was unusual for her. "Derek, I want to talk to you about something," Jack said as Carrie disappeared into the kitchen to do the dishes. "It's different in there, too. Usually all 3 of us were doing it." "Sure, about anything." Jack handed me a beer, and we sat down in the living room. "Well, Carrie told me she told you about my problem." I nodded. "We want to have a baby. We're both getting older, so we know it has to happen soon." I was still silent. "Long story short, we want it to be you, okay?" That was unexpected. "You mean artificially?" I'd heard of it, but knew nothing about how it worked. "More than that, Carrie has needs, and although I do my best, she has some, well, you know." Jack blushed. "If you don't want to, that's okay. We'll understand. It's just that Carrie and I love you, and we know we can trust you." I was shocked by that. "Please? We talked about it, and she said she wanted to." "You want that from me? You mean me and Carrie? Let's see if I can get her pregnant?" "Yes, that's exactly what we mean." At that moment, Carrie walked into the living room. I had a feeling she was there eavesdropping. She looked at me and blushed. "You guys are serious, right?" They both nodded. Just like that, I made love to my best friend's wife. I never would have dared to do it, but they asked me to. I have to say that when we started, I didn't feel the slightest resistance. I loved her for what seemed like an eternity. Even when I was with another woman, I always thought of Carrie. So much so that over the last couple years, I had slipped into a mostly solo sex life. We walked back to their spare bedroom, a room I'd spent countless nights in all alone. We stood looking at each other. Carrie was red in the face, but looking determined. How could a person even start in a situation like this? "God, I can't believe this is happening," said Carrie finally. "Listen, Carrie, we shouldn't—" I'm so in love right now, I almost can't stand it. Don't you dare say no to me, she purred. And then she was in my arms. I know, another man's wife. For me, it was just fine. In fact, it was perfect. At one point, she reached down and snapped the latch holding the screws embedded in my legs. She then unbuttoned and removed my pants. Next, we made love. I could go into all the details, but there's no point. Carrie and I had amazing sex. About a half hour later, we did it again. Finally, her body and mine quivered in a way I had never known. I had been in love with her before, but now it was so much more than that. Love apart turned into love together. When I felt her slide off the bed and then heard the shower turn on in the other bedroom, I didn't even feel guilty. I heard her sounds and realized that she and Jack were making love in their own way. I rolled over onto my back and fell asleep, the kind of sleep I hadn't had in as long as I could remember. The next morning, Jack was sitting at the kitchen table with Carrie hustling around him, making pancakes and scrambled eggs. I poured myself a cup of coffee, expecting things to be a little uncomfortable. "Good morning," he said simply. "We have a bowling league today, don't we?" said I. "Yes, we need to take all 4 points to take first place," he said. "Normal. Perfectly normal." Carrie set down a plate for me, then set down her own and joined us. "Something happened last night," she said with a smile. That surprised me a little. I kinda knew about it. Jack had a reaction. There was a tickle in her voice. I realized. "Oh, really?" I managed. "Yeah, the best one so far. The doctor said he can get back to normal again." I don't know why, but Carrie being happy again just got to me. Jack said this without a shadow of embarrassment. It was certainly good for them. I was happy about it, and sad at the same time. If that was true, then where was I? It was probably reflected on my face. Jack and I had a long talk last night. Afterward, Carrie reached out and placed her hand on mine. "We were wondering if you wanted to come live with us," added Jack. "What do you mean? Move in permanently?" I asked. "Yes, that's exactly what we mean. We all love each other, and I love you both." Carrie said this with a huge grin. "And how would that work? I mean, with both of us?" I really didn't know how to say it. "I'm sure I'll manage. How about you?" Giggling, Carrie asked. She already knew I was going to answer yes. That night, Carrie walked into the living room, and the three of us knelt down and swore to each other. She put a candle on the coffee table, and we all held hands. This is as close to a wedding as society allows. We also went and made a special bed. It's 3 feet wider than one of the ones at California King's. When there were 3 of us on the regular bed, I was constantly moving out of it, and having no legs is unfair in a situation like this. Also, Carrie turns over about 50 times every night, and all the blankets end up wrapped around her in the middle. We call her the crib pig. She immediately lashes out at us about our snoring, but we both deny that we snore. "Yeah, it's a threesome." "No, Jack and I are normal. Carrie's made love to both of us many times in the same night. It's fun to watch, and Jack and I have taught each other a few things. Carrie is very happy. One night we asked her which one of us was better. She laughed and said we were different. "Jack is bigger, but you're stronger," she said. "Jack isn't bigger," complained I. "No, I'm bigger," he said. "Okay." Carrie was really giggling now. We look at each other a lot, it's great. But like I said, Jack and I aren't interested in each other. We're quite happy with our little wife. Yeah. She's my wife too, I can feel it. Except for the threesome, we're perfectly normal. Well, as normal as 2 cripples and 1 very attractive woman can be. 9 months after that first night, Jack and I were getting quite a few funny looks from the nurses as we stood and watched our baby boy being born. One problem arose very quickly. They wouldn't let me in. Only the husband. Carrie raised a scream and said she wasn't going to give birth until her other husband was with her. They gave up and sent a nurse to come get me. How stressful is that? I tried to get it all on camera, but my hands were shaking so much that it didn't come out clear. We named him Jack Jr. It was a little guess on our part, which turned out to be correct when the test results came back. A year and a half later, they still weren't used to us as we stood and watched little Kate being born. She turned out to be mine, but I already knew that. Don't ask me how I knew, I just knew. That time, Jack filmed it on camera, and he got a blurry picture. Like I said, tense. We get even more funny looks as we walk down the street, Carrie in the center, holding hands with Jack and me. One little piece of chaos on each side that we're hanging on to. I walk with a swinging gait, Jack with a pronounced limp. Jack always walks on his right side because he has a limp left arm, and Carrie holds on to him because the kids can let go, and if he doesn't look, he won't know it. Yeah, lots of funny looks. We don't care about the stares, we're used to it. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.